A finite game is played for the purpose of winning, an infinite game for the purpose of continuing the play. James Carse. We live in a world that loves a leaderboard. From the time we're young, we're told to look at the person next to us, measure our differences, and then perform better. We track our lives by the business cards we collect, the titles we achieve, and striving for the next big milestone on the horizon. It's an easy trap to fall into because society rewards the hustle, and it feels good to watch our ascension. But you might have also noticed a quiet exhaustion creeping in. Yeah, you're hitting the targets and doing everything to advance. Yet the personal satisfaction finish line keeps moving. The promotion came and the bonus hit your account. But very quickly, the thrill is gone, replaced by the same old pressure to chase the next waypoint. It starts to feel less like progress and more like a treadmill that you can't turn off. You might start looking at your coworkers as obstacles, and you treat every day like a frantic sprint to a destination that doesn't actually exist. When you treat your career like a race, you might not actually be building something lasting. You could just be running away from the fear of standing still. Maybe you've been trying to win a game that isn't meant to be won. It's time to stop running and look in the mirror, then ask yourself who you're actually competing against. However, it's easy to mistake a new title for actual progress. We see a step up on the organizational chart and we assume it means we've grown. But there's a dangerous trap hidden inside that rapid advancement, and it happens when our rank outpaces our actual capability. If you spend all your energy management chasing the next title, you can easily slide into a position where your resume looks impressive, but your foundational skills are hollow. Think about it this way. When you optimize for the appearance of success rather than the substance of it, you're building a fragile foundation. You might land the corner office or the senior title, but deep down, you know the truth. You haven't actually developed the deep operational competence required to sustain that level of leadership when things get chaotic. You might be holding a title, but you aren't holding the mastery of leadership. And this discrepancy can catch up to us fast. The moment the market shifts or the organization undergoes a major restructure, the fluff can get stripped away. And if you don't have the hard skills and the mental resilience to back up the title, you can become a liability to your team and to yourself. True professional security doesn't come from a line on a resume. It comes from the objective value you bring to the table every day. On the other hand, when you shift your focus towards mastery, you stop worrying so much about how fast you're climbing, and you start looking at each role as an opportunity to build a skill set that no one can take away from you. So instead of only scanning for the next rung on the ladder, start looking at the work directly in front of you. But here's another thing. When you're completely fixated on a future milestone, something strange can happen to your daily performance. You might start treating your current tasks like chores that you have to get done to get to the good stuff. When you're constantly living in the future, the work on your desk today can start to feel beneath you. It has a way of breeding discontent that eats away at your focus, which actually has some irony to it. By devaluing the present, your execution drops. You can miss details or just doing the bare minimum to get by because your mind is already in the next office or at the next salary level. But few ever advance their career with any level of quality by doing mediocre work in their current role. You'll more than likely end up sabotaging the exact promotion you're obsessing over because your day-to-day output stops reflecting excellence. This is where a lot of us get stuck. We wonder why we're being passed over, and we often blame the company or our boss. But if you look closely, it might simply be a reflection of the reality of your current responsibilities. Proficiency and attention to detail isn't something you turn on like a light switch once you finally get the title you want. It's a baseline standard that you maintain when the task feels small. If you want to change the trajectory, you have to bring your focus back to the work you're responsible for right now. When you commit to mastering your current role, the future tends to take care of itself. It's about building a reputation for execution that can't be ignored, which only happens when you give your full energy to the present moment. That's how you turn daily frustration into momentum. Whereas when you view your career as a personal sprint, you inevitably start looking at the people around you as hurdles. Every meeting becomes a competition, and every shared project becomes an arena where you have to prove you're the smartest one. This mindset tells you that for you to win, someone else has to lose. It forces you to play defense, to hoard information, and internally root against your own peers. But high-level leadership doesn't happen in isolation. If you treat your coworkers like adversaries, you might secure a few short-term wins, but you're slowly erasing your organizational trust. And you can quickly burn relational equity that took time to build just to get credit for a specific project. And then, over time, people are going to stop wanting to collaborate with you. They'll probably stop bringing you in on the loop. And they'll certainly not advocate for you when you're not around. The reality of any modern workplace is that you cannot scale your impact alone. True influence requires a network of mutual respect and shared standards. When you sacrifice that trust to the benefit of your personal timeline, you isolate yourself. Yeah, you might climb a few rungs on the ladder, but you'll find yourself standing there with no support structure beneath you when a real crisis hits. It's about recognizing that a rising tide actually does lift all boats. So when you stop competing with your peers and start mentoring them, supporting them, and elevating them, your value to the organization rises faster than if you push them down. The goal isn't to outrun everyone else. It's to build a team that can go the distance together. But if you lock onto a strictly linear path, you develop a dangerous form of tunnel vision. You'll likely convince yourself that the only acceptable move is straight up, and anything else can feel like failure. If an opportunity doesn't come with a more prestigious title or an immediate pay raise, you might reject it out of habit because it doesn't fit the defined timeline you've already drawn up in your head. But this narrow focus causes you to overlook the high-value lateral moves that actually can build long-term career resilience. Sometimes, the best strategic decision you can make is to step sideways into a completely different division or assignment, learn a new side of the business, or take on a role that forces you to build a new skill set from scratch. Yes, on paper, it might look like a step back or down, but in reality, it's a significant compounding investment in your personal baseline capacity. When you refuse to look at anything outside the upward linear track, you can become professionally fragile. When you've optimized for velocity instead of adaptability, that ladder that you're climbing within your company, what happens if the company goes away? Or if your department downsizes? You're likely stuck holding a ladder and have a narrow set of skills. True self-leadership means recognizing that a career isn't a highway. It's terrain. You have to be willing to navigate the valleys and the side paths to truly understand the landscape. And when you value skill asymmetry over a predictable trajectory, you build a professional portfolio that is diversified and highly secure, no matter how the landscape shifts around you. Breaking free from this narrow vision requires you to stop measuring your success purely by vertical momentum. You have to start asking yourself what capabilities you're actually acquiring. However, personally, when your entire professional life is driven by upward movement and validation, you inevitably introduce a level of chronic anxiety into your daily life. If a meeting gets rescheduled, a project gets pushed back, or feedback isn't instantly positive, your stress can spike because you view it as a direct threat to your timeline. You end up constantly living in a state of survival-driven panic, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And this constant anxiety can degrade the quality of your decision making. Because when you operate from a place of fear, you stop making smart risks and start thinking strategically. Instead, you start making short-sighted, politically defensive moves to protect your turf. You become risk-averse, focusing more not on losing ground than on actually doing excellent work. You compromise your own baseline standards just to keep up appearances and avoid any perceived setbacks. The difficulty of this mindset is that it turns your career into a prison of your own design. You aren't leading yourself. You're just reacting to the environment. And that level of internal friction drains your energy and burns you out long before you ever reach your goals. You need to step off the panic button and trust your execution. When you anchor your worth to your internal standards rather than your professional velocity, the urgency disappears. You stop reacting to every minor bump in the road as a crisis. Whereas, by letting go of the desperate need for constant, immediate progress, you actually gain the clarity and the focus needed to make your decisions that serve your long-term growth. At some point, the noise has to stop, and you have to be present with the reality of the work you do every day. It's easy to keep running when everyone around you is cheering for the pace, but it's worth asking what you're actually trying to build. Because if you strip away the titles, the accolades, and the corporate markers, what's left is simply your standard of execution and the person you've become while chasing the goal. Personal accountability means realizing that nobody is coming to save you from the exhaustion of a game you choose to play. The pressure doesn't ease up when you get the next promotion, and the anxiety doesn't disappear with a bigger bonus. Those things just reset the clock. The shift happens when you decide that your value isn't determined by a seat in the boardroom or a title on a door, but by the integrity of your efforts, regardless of the task. Take a look at your goal timeline and your relationships with your team. Decide whether you're trying to win a temporary race or master a lifelong craft. The choice is all yours, and you make it every day with what you do next. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes with me. Until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and keep showing up.